This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Detroit is the greatest! Straight up light you on fire for a Coney dog right now.
Takes, throws, end zone, Calvin, touchdown, Detroit Lions!
In the air, left field, the Tigers march to the World Series!
Welcome everybody to the Motor City Sports Rant. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. On today's Motor City Sports Rant podcast, Jason Jarvie and myself, we're going to break down the Detroit Lions heading into training camp. Some good news was made this morning. Darius Slay, it was announced he will be attending training camp along with Damon Snacks Harrison. So one of the problematic storylines that could have taken place ahead of training camp has now been taken care of. Now, have their contracts been decided? Are they going to be extended? That has yet to take place. Jason and I will talk about that. The Detroit Sports Podcast Network will be out at Allen Park a lot more for training camp. It has happened. I will talk to Jason because he has experience going out to Allen Park. I want to get a sense of what I should expect, what he might be potentially looking for from the outlet regarding what we can provide in terms of coverage. I look forward to talking to him about that. And also in regards to something that took place organizationally in regards to the platform, the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, and how we're viewed and things like that. I want to ask Jason, should I send out this email in terms of maybe correcting a mistake that a pro team made with the Detroit Sports Podcast Network? And in the second half of the podcast, we're going to talk all about it. Expectations. We're going to talk about the fact that a national writer has come out and made news on Monday where he thinks your Detroit Lions are going to finish among the worst teams in the NFL. 3 wins. I want to talk to Jason all about that. And finally, I do want to talk about the fact that for some reason, and it's happened now for the better part of several seasons across multiple sports, hockey, baseball, basketball, the Toronto fans are making themselves well at home here in Detroit. I want to talk about my reaction to that when I was at Comerica Park and Vlad Guerrero Jr. hit his first career Grand Slam. I was in attendance, and to hear the loud ovation at Comerica Park just rubbed me the wrong way. Now, it was good to see. It was good to see Comerica Park with more fans, but unfortunately, they were all donning the color blue. They packed the place. They came in and they made themselves at home. I saw so many of them enjoying our Little Caesars pizza. And I'm like, good, spend that $12. You deserve to overpay for your pizza. But all kidding aside, fun group. The Toronto fans are definitely a good group of fans. But you know what? It's more to talk about the fact that the state of Detroit sports is not that great. And when you have teams all over the place and not really contending for championship, it lends to other organizations and their fans to come to your arenas and come to your ballparks and to really have a good time, especially the fact that by and large, more oftentimes than not, the Maple Leafs will defeat the Red Wings. The Bucks, Milwaukee fans came in and handled their business. The Raptors, they're going to come in and take care of the Pistons more often than not. And unfortunately, the Blue Jays, they won the series versus the Tigers. So when you have a chance, if you're only a couple hours away, why not come to Detroit, have a good time with it, and see what it's all about? But I'm looking forward to talking to Jason Jarvie all about it when I dial him up on the telephone. I do want to thank the presenting sponsor of this podcast. The Motor City Pawnbrokers are the one-stop pawn shop when you're in need of short-term cash or are looking for quality, brand-name new, and pre-owned merchandise with locations in Detroit, Ferndale, Roseville, and Warren. Their mission is to deliver exceptional value. Go check out all the available deals. Go find out as much information as you can about the Motor City Pawnbrokers by visiting MotorCityPawnbrokers.com. That's directionallychallengedpawnbrokers.com. Mark and the crew there, they're dedicated to providing great customer service. They want to change the perception of pawn shops. They want you to come in and be a lifelong customer. They want you to be able to go in there, check out the deals, and if you're in need of short-term cash or if you're in need of anything at all, they want to be able to help you with any of your needs. So for all information, again, go today and check out MotorCityPawnbrokers.com. All right, I always enjoy Tuesday when I get a chance to talk to my guy, Jason. Follow him on Twitter at Jarvie the King. Obviously, Jason, if you follow our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, you've heard, you now know, the Detroit Sports Podcast Network is now credentialed to cover training camp on a trial basis. Now, I want to talk to you. Obviously, I'm not in search of congratulations. I'm in search of your experience because you've actually been out to Allen Park to cover practice, to be out there. What was it like and what should I expect? Because I've never been to Allen Park. I don't even know where I'm going. It's like one of those kind of deals where it's like the first day of school. I'm super excited. Passively, I started to try in 2016, more serious in 2017, 2018, and I think myself and along with one or maybe two other podcasts have been credentialed, but I'm really excited for the opportunity, and I'm going out there Thursday morning. I will be in Allen Park.
You know, I think one of the best things you can do is if you find one of the beat writers or one of the big names in Detroit that you respect and you like what you hear from them, you know, watch what they do and see what they do, see how they're processing. And I know that you're not some newbie. You've covered sports before. You've been to Tigers games. You've been to Final Fours. But I think the NFL it's a different thing. So I would go there, maybe watch, and just don't ask dumb questions.
No, exactly. That's my plan. My plan the first go around is really not to ask any questions at all. It's just to report information. That's my deal, is to learn. And that's what I really have done with all the other reporting that I have done. But outside of golf, because golf, I said, okay, I had a plan. I was super prepared, and I was obviously a big fan of golf, so I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do. With football, yeah, it's so expansive. There's so many players. There's so much information. There's so much to take in that learning will be definitely key. Now, here's the funny part, okay, because people sometimes question me, and they're like, why do you share so much about the process, the journey, okay? So first and foremost, it's interesting that it took me a couple years to try and explain what I did to these teams and things like that. But now I'll ask you this, because obviously you've seen that I do share a little bit of behind the scenes about what I go through, about trying to take a podcast and a non-journalist, a non-traditionally trained journalist to go out there and report on sports. But here's the funny part, okay? Each of these teams, the pro teams in Detroit, they have these media sites, and you put in your information and you put in your affiliation. Now, every other team, except for one, I'm not going to say who, put my information correctly, which is good. But one of them listed me incorrectly. They didn't even officially, like, if you click down on the menu, it'll say Free Press, Detroit News, ESPN. It has the name of the other podcast website correctly, and it doesn't list mine. It puts me involved with another organization that I'm not even a part of. Do I send the email from me and say, look, add me correctly, or do I just let it go and just, hey, maybe get a laugh if I show up there with the credential with another company on it with my name? Because it does bother me a little bit because of the fact it's attention to details, and there are other organizations. There's another podcast on there with the correct website, and you don't include me correctly. And it's not like my name is so I mean, it's long. I think that's the problem. But you could shorten it. You could ask, hey, do you want to go under DSP? What do you want to go in? It's a little bit long, your name, in terms of putting it on there. But at the same time, it just rubs me the wrong way. Why don't you just get it right the first time? I mean, it just bothers me.
You know, I think you got to take this kind of with a grain of salt, because
Every time, it's like, okay.
Have they messed it up every single time?
No, it's no. Sometimes they do spell my name wrong, or sometimes they'll not put the organization or things like that. But no, not in terms of completely affiliating me with the wrong group. No, it never happened before.
So I mean, with that type of thing, I think that might just be a clerical error. And what I would suggest, I would probably send an email, not be a jerk about it, because when you were saying, do I message him and say, hey, get it right? Don't be like that. Just be like, hey, saw that you had me listed with this company. I'm actually with this company, if you wouldn't mind. so there isn't any confusion when you get down there.
Yeah, exactly. That's the funny part is I fully expect it. They're going to be like, huh? You're not on the list? I'm like, that's happened so many times. I just laugh it off, and people are actually surprised by my reactions because I expect it. I expect to show up there and be like, huh? You're not on the list? Who are you? And I'll be like, or they'll be like, the gates don't open yet. You're a fan. I'm like, no, I want to be here at 8. I know the press is at 8:45. Oh, no, it changed to noon. And you're like, oh, my gosh. Because I have a tight schedule, so I can't just be there all day and night. I planned it out for a morning window a couple times a week, and I'll be out there. So look for it at Detroit Podcast. It's a big accomplishment. I worked hard for it, so I'm going to enjoy it and get out there, and we'll see where it goes. Did you read the reports? Some people now are starting to predict records for the Detroit Lions like we do. Nate Davis, USA Today NFL writer, he wrote and kind of set Twitter ablaze on Monday. He wrote that he believes the Detroit Lions are going to be among the worst teams in the NFL in 2019. He has them at 3 wins. And I just find it hard to analyze that and look at that seriously because of the fact that, hey, the NFL, if you just disregard the Lions completely, Jason, you just disregard the Lions, the schedule in of itself kind of shakes out where a lot of teams can win 5 games if you show up because of the cap situation. The league is kind of set up where a lot of teams are mediocre in that 6 to 8 win range, and then there's only a handful of teams that are upper echelon. Why do you think he put them down at 3 wins, and do you think the Lions are actually closer to 3 wins, or are they closer to 8 or 9?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm going to go that they're closer to 8 or 9. I think, it's either a case of he's thinking worst case scenario or he clearly isn't doing his job. Worst case scenario, Darius Slay, Snacks Harrison, they both hold out, and we don't get either of those guys on our defense, which that would really hurt the defense this year. And I'm not sure if it would be enough to, propel us down to 3-11, but it would certainly be a blow to our defense. And we're also worst case scenario. You're talking about injuries and Stafford basically having a repeat of the end of last season. But where I tend to think that he might have not have done his homework, I'm not sure if he's looking at the end of last year and going, that's as good as they are. Stafford's not going to improve. And he's not looking at everything that was going on around him that, they traded away Golden Tate. Marvin Jones was out for the last half of the season. Kenny Golladay was hurt, and basically the only receiver was getting double and triple covered. And even though we did have a good defense, we had 0 offense at that time. And we didn't have Kerryon Johnson. We were trying to scrap together a running game. So that leads me to think that he might not have done his homework. That the Lions, they aren't 3-11. I think it's hard to really predict an NFL team that's going to be 3-11. You got to at least think that they're going to win 5 games, somewhere around 4 to 5 games.
Exactly, 3-13 because there's 16 games in the NFL schedule. And right. And I want you to every morning now throughout training camp fire up the Twitter machine and go to my page because it was announced on Tuesday, earlier this morning, Darius Slay is showing up. Obviously, he doesn't want to lose $1 million. Snacks on Monday announced he's going to show up. So one of the early storylines that people were worried about, were those guys going to hold out? The answer is no, they're going to show up. And I think that bodes well for Bob Quinn and his reputation because of the fact that I'm still holding out hope that I don't want them extended. I want them to play out their deals this year and then maybe potentially renegotiate next year. So they're going to show up. That's going to be good. The distraction on that side will be low. In terms of training camp, a couple items that people are paying attention to involves the new offense. It involves the rookies. It involves Matthew Stafford and what he's going to potentially do. So I'm excited for training camp. It's time, baby. Football starting, and I'm really, really excited. Anything in particular that, when you look at the Detroit Lions early on, the first couple weeks of training camp, that excites you or that you're going to pay attention to? Obviously, the defense, obviously the news that was made on Monday, Trey Flowers starting the season on the physically unable to perform list kind of freaked some people out because of the fact that, hey, you just paid the guy $90 million. He's not going to be there early on in training camp. He just had shoulder surgery. We all have been through the Ziggy Ansah, DeAndre Levy nightmare, so people are kind of freaking out there a little bit, overreacting. But I'm excited for a lot of the stories that could potentially develop. One that's underrated is what's going to happen along the offensive line, because early on, when you read the reports, people are talking about a lot of the players might be shifting. They might be playing at different spots, so that'll be something also to look for and to pay attention to is what's going on with the offensive line.
Yeah, my biggest thing in training camp to be watching is, and it's not that interesting, but I want to make sure that everyone I want them to stay healthy, man. I want to go into this season and have my full roster, the full guns ablazing. I don't want to go in there with somebody with a nagging hamstring injury. And I know it's a lot to ask because it's so easy to just go out there and tweak something. But, I want to see what this Lions team can be when they're fully healthy. I want to see a full season of Kerryon Johnson. I am excited about C.J. Anderson, the backup that they got, because I think that could be a nice change of pace. And, if Kerryon Johnson does need a spell, I think C.J. Anderson's at least a comparable backup running back. And in the wide receivers, with Marvin Jones and Kenny Galladay, and who else is going to be behind him? That's what I would like to see. I like Danny Amendola. I think people are going to be surprised, and I bet this season you're going to see Danny Amendola a bunch. If he stays healthy, I think he's going to be a favorite target of Matthew Stafford. And then obviously the tight ends. What is T.J. Hawkinson? What's he going to be? How fast can he pick up this offense? And will he be a factor this season? Those are the biggest things for me.
No doubt about it. I can't wait. Pay attention. First practice is open to the public on Thursday. The Detroit Sports Podcast Network will be out there this week, I believe, Thursday and Friday morning. We'll bring everything that we can to the masses. I look forward to it. I'm really excited for the opportunity. It's nice to be acknowledged in terms of, hey, come on out, check it out, and make sure that you do the good work. And I will. I think that it'll be a good time. Can you share a story about your time covering? Did you catch any good quotes? Did you get a chance to be around a scrum with Stafford? What was your time like when you went out there to Allen Park?
I was fortunate enough. I think the actual press conference setting, it was Jim Bob Cooter. Remember that guy? And, he was basic. He gave all the right answers, and then it was him, and I got to see Stafford in that, and that was I'm pretty sure I've shared this story that seeing Stafford up there was just like, man, he is so cool. It's so cool being there and being next to a guy who, it's hard to say idolize as I'm an older as I've gotten older. It's hard to say that I idolize these people, but it's seeing these people that you see on TV all these times, and they're these bigger than life personalities. They're just like you and me. They're sitting there. They answer questions. So that was really cool. And being in the scrums, I think one of the most interesting ones was actually Zach Zenner, just because he looked so small. And that's nothing against Zach Zenner, but it was really cool being there, and he talked a little bit, and it's a really neat place to be, and it's a great experience.
Okay, so piece of advice for me, I'm directionally challenged. Will I be able to make my way through the facilities from the practice area to the interview room to the Kowalski media room? Will I be in a good spot to just get my way around, or will I end up outside the building first day?
You will want to find the people who know where they're going and follow them. That's what I found. It was I was in a room, and I think I was in there with Tony Ortiz, and he was in there, and when it was time to go, I followed Tony Ortiz because I know that guy knows where he's going.
Understood. That's what I'll do. I think I do have a colleague that likes me a little bit, tolerates me more likely, more realistic, that I think I'll gravitate towards and things like that. I'm excited. Like I said, it's a good honor, but like I said, it comes with some funny aspects. Like, okay, I want to be John Macaroon with Detroit Sports Podcast Network and not the organization they put me with. But it's quite funny. Maybe I'll send that email later on today and just be cordial and say, hey, please affiliate me correctly, because at the end of the day, it will come back to bite me if it's wrong. So, interesting stuff. Follow Detroit Podcast. We're new. We're going to be doing it. Obviously, it's a great honor, and thank you guys out there for listening and downloading and clicking and making this all happen. Wouldn't happen without you guys. Now, final couple topics are going to involve the Detroit Tigers and struggles that they had. I did get a chance to go out to Comerica Park a couple times, one as a fan and a couple times as a media member. And Jason, by and large, the Toronto fans came out in full force, and I'll give my take on that in just a few moments here. Obviously, the Blue Jays, they came out and They played well. They're not the best baseball team, but they got some young talent. And obviously, when they have this young star, Vlad Guerrero Jr., a lot of times now the coverage is going to be about situations outside of the Tigers. And Vlad Guerrero on Saturday just launched a massive grand slam, and it resulted in Comerica Park erupting in cheers with so many Toronto Blue Jay fans in attendance. It was crazy to see. But the news of the weekend involves Nick Castellanos because of the fact that on Sunday, obviously the first two games, the Blue Jays won and they defeated the Tigers. And Sunday, it was not looking too great after the Blue Jays tied the game 3-3. Shane Green hasn't been pitching all that much. He goes into the game with a 3-1 lead. He blows the save in the ninth inning, and people are like, oh, man, here we go. Another situation where a guy that we could potentially trade has started to now diminish his value. Matthew Boyd, been up and down, gives up a lot of home runs. People are really concerned regarding what we're going to get back for Boyd, Green, and Castellanos. So after the game, Castellanos is talking to the media, and they're asking him basic questions about, like, okay, your time is probably going to end. There's a lot of rumors regarding you being traded, and it's been asked to him pretty much every day. And he said, look, at this point in time, I don't care. And he said, and he did reference what he meant. He said, look, I can't control it. It's not something I can control. Eventually, one day I'm going to go gray, and why worry about it if eventually it's going to happen? He's like, at this point in time, I don't care. I'm just going to go out there and handle my business. But a lot of people kind of reacted strongly to those comments. I understand what he meant. He meant to say, look, it's a factor outside my control. I can't emphasize and really focus on that because that will really make you upset when you focus on anything you can't control. But the three words that I think disconnect people from you is the words, I don't care. Because of the fact that means you have no emotional attachment. It means that you're ready. You're ready to go out the door. And then the other comment that pissed people off a little bit was he said that, you know what, this park is a joke. Comerica Park takes away my home runs, doesn't allow me to produce offensive numbers. How can I be compared to others? And obviously I think he's referencing the fact that he can't get a contract what he wants. He can't get a contract extension. He can't get the numbers because when you are negotiating the other side in terms of Al Avila and the Tigers, they're using his numbers against him. But at the same time, yes, Comerica Park does, take away home runs, but you do play a lot of games on the road, and he's not producing at a high clip in terms of home runs outside of Comerica Park. So I just think it wasn't the best way to deliver the message for Nick C, but I understand it. It just kind of, it's a situation where you realize, okay, this guy's ready to go. He don't care anymore. He's not being PC. If you ask him a question, he's going to answer it. And I just think he's answering it a little bit too aggressively. And I just think there's a fine line between being aggressive and being a little bit, assertive in terms of saying, hey, I understand the position of the organization, and we'll see what happens. I've enjoyed my time. That's probably a better response than I don't care.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's really hard because it would be one thing if you're on a winning team right now, but this team has been in the dumpster for the past couple of years, and it's been literally for the last at least 2 years. That's been all the talk is Nick Castellanos on the move. He's probably tired of it. There's absolute truth to both of the things that he said, that he has no control on what the Tigers are going to do. And yeah, the Comerica Park sucks for hitters. It is absolutely a pitcher's ballpark, and yeah, his numbers are probably down. Who else's numbers are also down? Everybody on the Tigers. And you don't think Miguel Cabrera would love to be hitting at a shorter ballpark? I mean, he might not be going through the type of slump that he is. He might have some more power numbers in a hitter friendly park. So I don't blame Nick Castellanos for those comments at all, because those are absolutely true. Those have been true since the stadium opened. But Jason, I want to tell you this. When the Tigers had Prince Fielder, when they had Victor Martinez, when they had better hitters, Yoenis Cespedes, they would hit home runs. It's just a situation where when you look at it factually, the Tigers ballpark is like around 14th in terms of how many home runs the ballpark takes away. So yeah, it's not hitter friendly, but it's around middle of the road in terms of being a ballpark that hitters can't hit home runs. If you're a left-handed power hitter, you can decently hit home runs. If you're somebody that has the abilities and can come in and handle business, look, Vlad Guerrero Jr.,
hit his first career grand slam off of, Greg Soto, and he was able to, help the cause. So, yes, obviously the Comerica Park dimensions have been talked about, but I think the biggest concern that many people would have is they probably should have built a team that could be more of a contact hitting team and get around the bases. Instead, after you decided to rebuild, you still got a bunch of guys that are home run hitters in a park that isn't suited for that. So that's the biggest problem. But in terms of what Nick C's talking about, there's this stat called splits, and they tell you how you're playing home and away. He's not drastically hitting that many more home runs. I mean, it's 8-3. He's hit 3 home runs at Comerica, 8 on the road. He's only got 11 home runs, but he's not performing at a clip that would indicate it's like, oh, it's that significant. Yeah, maybe he would get 3-4 more home runs this season out of it, but at the same time, I think that there are ways to say things without saying it that way, like how I said, where you say, hey, how are you feeling about being traded? You go along the lines and you say, hey, you know what, it's tough, but at the same time, I understand that my position could increase. I hope I get to go to a team that's contending, and I hope things are better. So for me, I would hope that Nick Castellanos at this point in time would handle it a little bit more gracefully. Now, I know he probably doesn't have to because of the fact that the Tigers have told him, look, they've told him already, there was no trade value for you earlier this year. We don't want you. They've told him in so many words, we are not going to re-sign you. So I understand his frustration, but at the same time, that's what it means to be professional, is to stand up there day in, day out. It's good when you cash the fat check every 2 weeks, but it's not good when you realize your time is up and the organization is going to move on from you. He should be really excited because of the fact that potentially he could be upgrading his position. Now, I know he maybe wants a $12 million a year deal for 5-6 years, and he's not going to get it from anybody. But at the same time, you're going to be leaving a losing organization, and you're probably going to be going to hopefully an organization that gets to go to the playoffs. So I think being a professional means that when you're irritated the most, when you're hearing the same question over and over and over, you give the same answer. And I just think that Nick C now has gone full. He's gone full loose, and he don't care anymore the repercussions of his actions. Because guess what? Okay, Jason, you got a hitter, and he's coming out. He's played in your organization, and we're trying to recruit young guys, and we're trying to, rebuild a team with people that want to be on board. And you got a guy coming out publicly and saying, hey, this ballpark sucks. Does that really help the cause of the organization? Does that really help?
But you aren't telling all of Nick Castellanos' quotes, though, because they did ask him, are you, does it intrigue you to be possibly traded to, a contender? And he came back and said, I'm not going to answer that, because if I say, yeah, I'm, the possibility excites me, the headline's going to read Nick Castellanos wants out of Detroit. So he is being as professional as he possibly can in an awful situation.
Definitely awful, but you think you're okay with it. It doesn't incite you. It doesn't make you mad, and you realize, you know what? You accept what he's saying. You understand why.
Yeah, it's a business. Nick Castellanos doesn't owe me anything. He didn't win us any titles. He didn't, go out and bring anything to Detroit. So he didn't bring me anything. So he doesn't owe me anything. I didn't give anything to Nick Castellanos. I didn't, has anybody? And I hate to say this, but honestly, has anybody really invested in Nick Castellanos? Like when you look at the Red Wings and you take Sergei Fedorov, one of the most polarizing characters here in Detroit, I think one of the reasons people were so upset when he left is because people invested in Sergei Fedorov. He was one of the great players, and that was, when you think about who's your Red Wing, Fedorov was people's Red Wings. When you think about Nick Castellanos, yeah, Fox Sports Detroit has the whole who's your Tiger, and some people might say Nick Castellanos, but really, what has he done to endear himself to this team and to the fans? Okay, and that's not saying anything bad about him, but that's just the truth.
Okay, Jason, I can respect that. You're saying, look, really, at the end of the day, he isn't a guy that was a major contributor anyway. You're okay to see him go. Whatever he says isn't hitting your radar. I disagree a little bit, but I think it's a fair point, a fair discussion. And it's going to be interesting to see if he doesn't get traded. If at the end of the year, obviously, he's not going to be offered a contract. He's just going to go somewhere else. But it's going to be important for Al Avila in the next week or so, and we'll pay attention to that here at the podcast. In the next 8 days, who does Al Avila trade, who goes where, and what is brought back? That's the most important thing. Now, one final note. I did notice the sea of Toronto Blue Jay fans that came to Comerica Park. And it just seems now that in terms of opponents' invasions, the Toronto fans, in terms of the Maple Leafs, in terms of the Raptors, in terms of the Blue Jays, they're coming to Detroit in swarms, and they're loud, they're boisterous, they're a fun bunch, they're very nice, very cordial. They, when you talk to them, you say, hey, what do you think of the ballpark? They're very impressed by the Detroit arenas, but they come in here, and for the better part now of 4 years doing this podcast, we've definitely noticed the sea of Toronto fans that come here and are super loud. Does it bother you? It bothered me, especially in games where, the Pistons and the Tigers, they're not drawing a lot of fans, where the opponents can come in and absorb a lot of tickets. It was one of the loudest ovations that you could see from a 3/4 full Comerica, where a lot of the fans were Blue Jay fans. When Vlad Guerrero hit that home run, a lot of people were impressed. They were screaming and yelling, and it was a massive ovation for Vlad Guerrero Jr. hitting his first Grand Slam, and it eventually cost the Tigers the game as they were up 5-1. I called that game. That was my 2 cold beer lock, my first one ever, and I had a good feeling. I was there. I was like, okay, it's going to be a fun time. I got to hang out longer because there was a rain delay of an hour, so I had some drinks, had a good time. Tigers are up 5-1, and Vlad Guerrero comes back and hits the baseball a ton, and Grand Slam, and the Tigers lose. You care?
Yeah, as a fan, and when you're actually at the stadium for that type of a game, it does suck. It sucks that you're paying that money, but again, this is what we get when we have this type of product. If we had a better product to put out there, we wouldn't be having this issue. If the Pistons and the Red Wings and the Tigers, they all were actually doing good, Toronto fans wouldn't have as much of an opportunity to get these tickets. People would be buying them. People would be going to see the product, but it's not a good product we're putting out there. I want to hope that in the near future that the Red Wings might put out a better product, and hopefully maybe Dwayne Casey has them going in the right direction. But we got to fix ourselves first. And I'm not gonna blame fans for not buying tickets for seeing a bad product. I don't want to pay an exorbitant amount of money to go to watch the Tigers, who have only won 8 home games. No, thank you.
That's why we got you on this podcast. Succinct, I like it. Exactly. You can't begrudge the Toronto fans. Only a couple hours away. Come enjoy a ballpark. Maybe one day, when the situation maybe is reversed, we'll go out to Toronto and enjoy some contests there and things like that. It might be a while. It might be a couple of decades, but eventually speaking, Detroit might turn it around. One of these teams hopefully we'll turn it around, and maybe it'll be a college team. We'll talk all about that. We'll start to preview college football, and we'll see what Jason is into and what he's observing in terms of storylines for the Wolverines and the Michigan State Spartans. Follow Jason on Twitter at Jarvie the King. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. We bring you the Motor City Sports Rant every Tuesday on Detroit Sports Podcast. We greatly appreciate all the downloads. You can find the podcast anywhere that podcasts are streamed. We greatly appreciate all the support. Thanks, Jason.
Later, man.
Okay, nice, idiot. F you. Bye-bye.
Good day, sir. I said good day.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Loser.